Hi everybody, my name is Cayetana Martinez and I'm a UQ Ventures program designer. Today in this workshop we are going to talk about pitching and storytelling. We will discuss how to build a good pitch that is user-centric and also how to deliver that pitch online or either via Zoom or via video conference or just via video like I'm doing now. So let's get started. So whenever we are pitching or presenting a solution, we have to always think about the pitch or the structure of the pitch into two steps. The first step is what is the user, who I'm designing my solution or my pitch for, right? So for example, if I'm presenting about a business idea that I just had, if I'm pitching a business, either product or service, it's very important that I focus my pitch around who is the user, what are their problems, what are the solutions, and how whatever I'm presenting, my product or service, solves some of their pain points and provides some benefits. So first I focus on the person, right? The customer segment I'm solving a problem for. Then we moved into the solution, how I actually gonna make that work, how I'm gonna build it, how I'm gonna monetize it, how I'm gonna make it happen, who's my team, what's my timeline, all the critical aspects that are gonna make my business successful. That's what we could say is the back end of the business or the foundation of that business model. So first I present the customer, the solution I'm building for that customer, and then I present how the business model is going to work. But the key is how to do that in a way that it connects with the audience. How can I do that, especially if I'm delivering via an online setting, in a way that is captivating? For that, I would suggest you guys use what we call the storytelling canvas, and you use one per pitch, one per business idea, one per presentation. The idea of this storytelling canvas is to set up whatever you want to say following these blocks. First, the main three blocks on the top: what's your subject, what's your goal, and what's your audience. That's basically is what do you want to say? Why are you saying it? And who are you saying it to? And then the 5 blocks at the bottom allow you to structure your message. How is the audience or the room you're going to be walking into to present? That's the before. What are you going to say at the beginning? What are you going to say in the middle of your pitch? That's basically the aha moment when you make your point. How are you going to wrap up and how you want your audience to feel after you leave, where you want them to remember after you leave and therefore take action on, right? So those would be the 5 main points to structure your pitch around. In the first bit of this presentation, I focus on a business idea pitch, but of course it can be for whatever you want to do. It can be a quick presentation you have in a meeting. It can be a TED Talk. Whatever you need to present, I would suggest to follow this structure. First, think on your subject, your goal, and your audience, and then break it down into these 5 steps: before, scene, make your point, conclusion, and after, to allow you to structure your message very clearly, to make sure that you understand when you have to highlight and introduce new concepts and when you just have to repeat, to understand when you have to have a punchy wrap-up line, call to action sentence, and when can you introduce a nice, involving, captivating story. Usually what we do with this type of pitches is to encourage you to get personal. When we talk about storytelling, we talk about the mix between your business idea, for example, that you want to deliver, and the call to action that you want to get from your audience, and some of your personal stories, some of the personal reasons that led you to be the now and that led you to have that business idea. We want to know who are you. So it's not just about your business idea or your presentation or your TED Talk. It's about you as the person who delivers that. And to do so, I would always recommend to start with either a personal story, a rhetoric question, an anecdote, thought that is truly personal and connects with you, as a way to show that your story is genuine and is true and you're passionate about either your business, your presentation, your talk, whatever it is, okay? Moving on. Here you have a list, a quick checklist of things that you have to consider when you pitch your idea or when you build your storytelling. And as you'll have this list and these slides, I will leave to you to go through them later. So this is basically how the both worlds will come together, right? If you are pitching a business idea, for example, I would definitely encourage you to first think about the user, the solution, the business model, and then put that in the structure of the storytelling canvas, right? So once you know what's your business idea about, who's the user, who's the customer, and how you're going to make money out of it, you structure all of that following this storytelling canvas, so it looks nice, smooth, it flows, it's engaging, it's captivating, and it also has a powerful message and a take action at the end. So after that, you'll have a pitch. So what would be next? So imagine now you have crafted a pitch and coronavirus happens and suddenly you don't have an audience of say 40 people that are going to listen to your business idea and maybe give you some money prize afterwards. You are just now stuck at home and the only thing you have to convey your message is a computer and Zoom. So how would you do and still engaging, enthusiastic, attracting delivery online? That's what we're going to cover in the second part of the presentation. So let's do it. First, I'm going to focus on the platform per se, the settings and the visual material. So everything that you need to have prior you start talking. And then I'm going to focus on the performance itself, okay? So first, where is the camera? As much as you can, try to set your computer in a position where the camera is eye level from you, right? So probably you've noticed that my eyes, as much as I can, have been looking straight into you. I'm looking straight into the camera. It's not always easy, of course. You have to look at your computer to move the slides and move things around. But as much as you can, try to engage with a little red pilot on your camera rather than look on your slides or look out of the window or look down, because the camera is like eye contact for you. You cannot screen the room as we usually do when we are face to face. The only thing you have now to keep eye contact is to look straight into the camera. So as much as you can, I will ask you to do that. Also, it's also important to keep a good distance between you and the camera. Don't get too close like this. That's weird. Don't get too far away because then you can't see me, right? Or you lose a little bit of attention. So try to keep good distance, good social distance between you and the camera in a way that people at least can see it to the top of your shoulders, right? In terms of microphone, same. Make sure that the microphone is working. Make sure that it's not mute. And sometimes it's easier if you don't use a headset. Sometimes the headset gets in the way and it doesn't really improve that much the microphone quality. So just check that. Something that of course you always need to double check with your participants, especially if you're delivering like a presentation and more than one person can access the meeting or can connect their microphones, is to make sure that they mute their microphones upon entry. Okay, so whatever crazy thing is going on in their backgrounds, you don't hear it and it's not distracting for you. Also, try as much as you can to control the light. Again, I understand we live in normal houses. We don't have video studios. This is not a Hollywood, right? So it's not that easy to play with the lights and to make sure that there are no outside rooms. But as much as you can, try to have a normal, warm, nice light, especially a light that is not like on top of you, that marks down your eye cycles. And it's not a vanity thing. It's just because research shows that if you look tired, and particularly with big dark cycles under your eyes, people think that you are not trustworthy. Why that connection happened in our brains, I don't know, but apparently it's a thing. So as much as you can, try to look nice and fresh, and if that means that you don't have to have like down light coming onto you, that's even better. So try to fix that up as much as you can, even if it implies that you have to move positions or have a couple of tests just before you start. You think you don't need to talk about internet speed, battery, and notifications, but boy, do I need to. Those are really important points. Make sure that, of course, you have good internet speed. If your internet speed is not the best, try as much as you can then to allow some time between Q&A when you engage with your audience. Because it could be that it's a little bit of delay on your end or on their end, and then you start kind of talking over one another and the communication doesn't really work. So if you are aware that your internet connection is not the fastest, so that your speed is not the fastest, make sure that you allow 3-5 seconds between you talk and the other person talks. Battery, always charged. Even if you think, oh, I have plenty of battery, always charge. Being on video conference, especially if they are live, take up a lot of batteries. Always connected, always charging. And then if you have other tabs on your computer, I will definitely suggest shut everything down, everything you don't need for this presentation, all the 10,000 tabs that you may have open, shut them down, and especially your email, shut it down. Because if you have emails coming up and then they have a small notification every time they come up, like ping, 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 super distracting, 100% unnecessary. So everything that is not connected with the talk, you can, of course, shut it down. And because, as you know, you can share your screen when you are presenting and you have a slide deck that you want to share with your screen. If you are on Zoom, for example, on Teams, Microsoft, you can share that quickly, but people can't see all the other screens that you have and all the other tabs. So it's always more elegant if you have everything closed down. In terms of platform, the platforms allow you to do many different things. This is not a Zoom webinar, so I don't walk you through all the functionalities of Zoom, for example, or any other video conference platforms. But what is really important for you to know is that these platforms allow you to set up waiting rooms, breakout rooms, have different backgrounds. So for example, I am in a nice neat room right now. If my room was a mess, or if I had pictures of my children in the background that I don't want to share with you, there is a functionality in both Microsoft Teams and in Zoom that allows you to blur the background or to put a different background altogether, like a picture or something. So you can always do that so you don't get a distracting background, or just you don't give people the opportunity to engage with whatever background or whatever house decor you have going on, right? So that's always an option. In terms of waiting rooms, I always suggest you guys to do so, especially if you're recording a session and you're not the first joining in. Create a waiting room, so if people join the call or the video conference earlier than you, they can be nicely waiting in a cyber waiting room without being recorded. So you don't have weird recordings of people like 10 minutes before the call starts just fixing their hair or on the phone with someone, right? And of course, remember that in all video conferences, there is a chat box functionality, so people can type up their questions in case they don't want to connect, or they can let you know about any internet issues they are having or any other things that they are struggling with. So always have that open and handy, because a chat box is always a really good tool to use. Sitting or standing, that's a really good question. That's completely up to you. If you want to stand, of course, you have to set up your computer differently, but I would always recommend, if you're an energetic person and you think you have good body language, a good hand gesture that will support your presentation, to try to stand up and maybe set up the computer on one of the shelves in a bookcase or something like that. Slide deck. Usually when you present, face-to-face, I would recommend to go with as less words as possible. Because it's easier to disengage in an online setting, I think it's always a good idea to have a mix of visuals and words, and maybe have like some animation going on, so not all the words come up at the same time, but every sentence comes up when you want to emphasize it, and then if people get a little bit lost, they can read through and catch up pretty quickly. If you're gonna have videos, that's perfect. Just make sure that you embed them on the screen and on the slide deck, rather than having a link that takes you to the internet, because that's like 3 steps away from your slide presentation, and especially if you're sharing a screen, it gets confusing and messy. So as much as you can, embed it on your PowerPoint and on your presentation, so people don't have to leave the presentation, they just stay there. And again, as I said before, check in with the audience, make sure that you engage with the camera as much as you can. It's very distracting if you can see yourself in a little screen at the bottom, like I can see myself right now. That's very distracting. It's very hard not to keep looking down on how you're looking, or if you're moving your hands too much or whatever. But as much as you can, remember that eye contact happens through you looking straight into the camera. And of course, this is not just about you. Make sure that you set some etiquette with your participants, that they know that they have to mute microphone upon entry, for example, that if they want to ask something, they have to connect camera and microphone, or at least microphone. If they are unable to do so, they can type up the question. If you don't want people to have to be like writing like crazy in the chat box as you speak, you can say, hey, please, while I'm talking, don't do the writing. I will ask you if you have any questions in 2 minutes, and then you can write as much as you want. Things like that. So whatever you need them to do, think about them beforehand, and then communicate that clearly before you start your presentation. Okay, so we've covered everything that has to do with platform and logistics. Let's move into the delivery and engagement. So first and foremost, I think it's very important that you acknowledge the difference from face-to-face. If you walked into an online presentation hoping you will be the same that being in that room with another 30 people listening to a pitch or listening to a lecture or a conference, it won't be the same. You'll be disappointed. It's a different experience. It has to be delivered differently, but also it's another opportunity and another channel. So just acknowledge that difference and embrace it. Regarding body language, of course, you don't have as much room or as much opportunity maybe to express yourself with the body, but you still a body and you still have a body. So as much as you can, use it. If you're a good person with your hands, if you use your hands, for example, to enumerate points, and it's something that I do and consider super useful. For example, if I want to say the most 3 important things in my business are 1, 2, 3, and that's useful for the audience so they kind of follow me, but it's also useful for me because it emphasizes my points. I still can do that online, so as much as you can, do that. If you think you can use your hands wisely, use them. But remember that what you have here is your face and your hands. You don't have much more unless you stand up and set up the camera and everything a little bit differently. So it's a little bit more contained, but you still can use it and you still can get the most of it. What you really can use is your tone of voice and your poses. Very important to use your poses wisely. You don't want to lose people's attention by talking flatly or by just not making any poses. You want to keep that going, and you want to have a little bit maybe more of extra dramatism. It's easy to disengage when you're on your computer. Someone is talking and suddenly you go on Facebook to check one thing, and 20 minutes later you went down a rabbit hole on social media and you completely disengaged from the class. And that kind of monotonous voice keeps talking in the background. If that voice suddenly stops or asks a rhetoric question or does something unusual, that will draw me back immediately. So as much as you can, try to do that. Remember also that there will be delays and echoes, especially if your internet is not the best. So make room for that. Don't speak right after someone, or just build in some time for that catch up to happen on the other side. And also, if there's something weird going on, like an echo, some feedback, something that is annoying, just mention it, acknowledge it, and then keep going. Okay? If you ignore it, people will start thinking, is she hearing that? Can she hear that? Am I the only one who's hearing that? Is maybe my problem? And they will disengage thinking about that. Just acknowledge it, like, oh, it seems like we're having some echo. How fastidious. Hopefully that passes soon, and that's it. Move on, okay? But acknowledge that that's happening. Same as if you are in a face-to-face workshop and suddenly there's a lot of noise coming from the other class. You will acknowledge that, right? Like, oh wow, those guys are having fun in the other room. Whatever it is, to acknowledge that something is interrupting you, and therefore maybe you're a little bit distracted for a second, but then you carry on. Something that could be a little bit tricky when you're online, and we just touched on that briefly before, is that you can get questions two different ways. People can do that by connecting the camera and the audio, just connecting the audio, or altogether just going on the chat, right? So that will require different back and forth of you between both different channels. So just make sure that as much as you can, you set some rules at the beginning so people know what's your preferred alternative for them to ask questions. So that way you educate your audience and you let them know when. If you want them to ask questions all throughout and then you read them later, if they are just allowed to ask questions via the camera at the end, if they can ask questions only via camera but throughout all the presentation, whatever is your preference, make sure that you say that at the beginning. Otherwise, people don't know. That's new for them. So they'll do whatever they think, okay? Use your hands, we talked about that. Stand back when possible. That's especially for deliveries or presentations where you are going to engage with your audience. For example, you pitch a business idea and then you let people to ask questions to one another. To ask questions to you. Allow, if possible, for them to engage with one another, okay? For example, if you are pitching about your business idea and someone has a question about the ecosystem in Brisbane, maybe hold back for a couple of seconds if someone else wants to join in or step in and answer that question for you, okay? That's where you create a little bit of that organic conversation that happens when you are face to face. If no one replies, then you go in. But just sometimes, if you allow some time, or if you let them to connect by themselves, or it's just to engage by themselves with you jumping in straight away, you can replicate a little bit that feeling of online community. Good thing online delivery has is that you can see people's names and surnames as they join in. So as much as you can use those, like Sandy has a question. Kelly wanna say something. Good question, Max. As much as you can say people's names. If you have a presentation that is more than an hour long, please build in breaks and say we'll be back in 5 minutes if it's a live conference. If it's something that you're recording, say you can stop here and do this exercise. Please come back to the recording when you are back. So whatever type of presentation you're doing, you can always build in a break. If it's a pitch, you probably don't need it, but for a conference maybe, then that would be helpful. In any case, keep it shorter than a face-to-face. And I will say by shorter, I mean at least 1/3 shorter than what you planned, ideally half it. And a piece of advice, and I'm sure that's very personal, but what I've noticed when you are online, if you're someone that uses sense of humor or sarcastic humor or jokes, face-to-face, that sometimes doesn't translate well on the online environment. So maybe just be mindful of that and be very sure that whatever you say cannot be misinterpreted or be taken out of context. And then when you do Q&A, always repeat out loud the question you are answering. If it's something that someone typed on the chat box, you're going to need to read it out loud. If it's something that someone says, it's very easy that the other people in the room or in the video conference didn't hear it well. So always, as much as you can, repeat it out loud. And remember, no distractions. If you have a lovely cat that's gonna purr, kick it out of the room. If you have lovely children that are gonna ask for snacks, kick them out of the room. That's what I just did. Whatever interruptions, distractions can be in your household or outside your household, as much as you can, minimize them. That means switch this off, mobile phone off, or even outside of the room. And if you live in a suburban area or in a busy area with constructions going on, please lock all the windows and make sure that as much as you can there are no outside noises that will bother you or distract you and your. That's all for today. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and happy online teaching. See you soon, guys. Bye.